You're listening to Ask Dr. Jake. My name is Dr. Jake Chucker, owner and founder of Good Life Family Chiropractic here on the south side of Lincoln. And I'm coming to you today with another message of hope, health, and wholeness. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is just a little bit of a preview for what we're going to be covering this Saturday at 10:30 a.m. in our office. And this is for our warrior patients, those patients that have been plugged into our office that want the most out of the 5 essentials for their health. We're taking our patients through this fearless immunity masterclass. We're strengthening our natural defenses by following God's laws of health and healing. And what are those laws? Number 1, understanding where health comes from. Health is a state of 100% optimal function and the ability of the body to heal across mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual components. If we do those things, then our body that keep our function high, then our body heals and functions at a state of 100%. That's health. Anything less than that is a state of dysfunction that leads to increasing levels of sickness, malfunction, dysfunction, disease, and an early death. And that's not what we want for anyone. And if that's where you're at, if you're living in a state of malfunction, if you're living in a state of sickness and disease, if you take more than 0 medications on a daily basis to keep you feeling good, to keep you symptom free, then you're operating in a state of dysfunction, sickness, and disease. And so if that's you, then pick up the phone, call our office at 531-289-7100, and we'll get you started with the first steps in how to start getting that function back. Essential number 2, the second thing that either keeps us healthy or makes us sick is actually our central nervous system. The central nervous system is what controls all function and healing. The ability of the body to heal and function is controlled by your central nervous system. When the sperm and the egg came together inside of your mother's womb, that actually started in that instant. There was an intelligence placed inside that single cell that duplicated and replicated that cell 36 trillion times to form this living, loving, thinking clay. And when that happened, you became you. It formed a heart, it formed a lungs, it formed skin, all of that controlled by your central nervous system and by the intelligence that God placed inside it there. And it continues to heal you. It continues to control you, all without you thinking about it. For your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for a cut to heal in your leg. A signal has to travel from the intelligence inside our brain down the spinal cord and out those nerves to every organ, cell, and tissue in your body. It doesn't happen any other way. So we keep that healthy. How do we keep that healthy? By assessing and reassessing, by gauging the posture of the spine, by gauging the movement of the spine, by assessing the health of the signals running through the spine. When those are all in the normal posture, your central nervous system stays healthy. When they go out of the normal posture, it inhibits those electrical signals that run through the nervous system and create a state of dysfunction in your body. The third thing that we need to look at is our nutritional intake. The nutrients that God created in whole foods to sustain life. And I'm not talking about the store. I'm not talking about whole paycheck. I'm talking about whole, real foods in their natural environment, grown and raised and brought to you, either by a farmer or, from the grocery store, picking those real foods. They have the nutrients in them for life and to sustain life. But when you get processed junk, if you eat the standard American diet, or as we refer to it in our office, the SAD diet, then you start to see a decrease in function, not because the intelligence inside of your nervous system is inhibited, but because that intelligence is limited by its expression across matter. And if that matter doesn't have its nutrients, then it starts to break down. You hear people talking about vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and these essential fatty acids and omega-3s and omega-6s and omega-9s. And you hear people talking about quercetin and just all these different herbs and spices. When you're deficient in those, your body doesn't heal like it's designed to. When it has those, your body heals perfectly, because that's how we're reflected by our Creator. He instilled in us this perfect innate intelligence, only limited by access to the Father through the laws and principles of health and healing, both through that mental, emotional, physical, spiritual components. And so that those nutrients are absolutely key. One of the most major nutrients is the fourth thing that we need to look at, and that's actually your oxygen supply. Oxygen is required in every cell, tissue, and organ in your body, but it doesn't happen without consistent, regular, strenuous movements. If you're not building up lean muscle mass inside your body, if you're not moving to pump that blood flow that carries oxygen to every organ, cell, and tissue in your body to resupply it with that most essential nutrient, then it's going to suffer. When you put a mask on and you're not able to take a deep breath, then your body's going to suffer and start to get sick. And we saw that with the most recent report from the CDC, that the most likely people to get COVID were the people that were wearing the mask the most often. Not because it doesn't block anything coming in or coming out, but because you're inhibiting your immune system through a lack of oxygen. Then the fifth essential is that most important essential of detoxification. And we're going to be talking about this a lot on Saturday, but essentially it comes down to this. God created our bodies perfectly to be able to detox from the toxins that we're exposed to around us. But as we get more and more intelligent and we discover more and more uses for God's creation, we distort the way that we're consuming those things, the way that we're exposed to those things. We create artificial man-made materials that our bodies have no idea what's going on, that the innate intelligence inside of us has never had an opportunity to see. And it creates a toxicity reaction inside of us that inhibits the function of every organ, cell, and tissue, some more specifically than others. And when you have these exposures, when you lack these nutrients, when you lack this function and the expression of life, that's when your body starts to break down. That's when you start to build up heart disease. That's when you start to build up cancer. That's when you start to build up type 2 diabetes. That's when you start to become overweight and weight loss resistant. That's when your thyroid starts to shut down. But when we start to work these things backwards, when we very specifically get into the causes for why you were diagnosed with this disease because of the specific symptoms that you have that they want to mask with a medication, then we start to get to the heart of the matter if we look to the cause. And so if you've never had that assessed, then pick up the phone, call our office right now, 531-289-7100. We'll get you started with the 5 Essentials assessment at a 50% discount off of our normal fee. And that would include the exam, any necessary imaging or x-rays. And if we do your first treatment that day, that treatment as well, that all would be normally costing you over $195 in our office. Today, it's just $95 if you set that up right now, and you get all those appointments within the next week on the same day. If it comes down and we're just doing the exam, you're getting that for just $25. And so it all depends on what we find in the exam process. If we find a perfect nervous system, then you get a high five on the way out the door. And I'll see you again in a couple of weeks to assess it again, because we go through these stresses of life. And in my 10 plus years of doing this, I've never yet seen a perfect spine. I've never yet seen somebody perfectly following the 5 essentials. I've never yet seen somebody that wouldn't benefit from 5 essentials care. And you know what? We sat down just the other week and we were talking with a patient who had a subclinical hypothyroidism, that their blood levels were coming out normal, but they had weight loss resistance, that their energy levels were low, that they were struggling. And even though their thyroid itself was testing at a blood level of normal, the thyroid was struggling to get there. It was competent enough to keep the blood levels high enough of T3 and T4 hormones, but it was struggling to get there. And we could see that on the digital nerve scan, that it wasn't getting the function that it needed. And when we looked at the x-ray, we saw the exact cause of it, because the person had lost the curve in their neck. It was bent backwards, literally tractioning out and damaging the spinal cord right where the nerves exited off to go to the thyroid and supply and give it life. And guess what? As we got started under care for this young lady, her thyroid began to turn back on better. She started to lose weight. And we've seen this time and again. Penny came into our office with a little bit of low back pain. We did an assessment on her spine, saw severe neurological interference in not just her low back, where there was a scoliosis and ligament damage causing a spondylolisthesis, but we also saw in her neck that, again, she had lost the curve and it was affecting the thyroid. And I started to counsel her on the 5 essentials, but the only one that she was able to start plugging in at that time was essential number 2, getting that nervous system healthy. But even that alone, and starting to change the way that she thought about life and health and vitality, it turned her nervous system back on. And let me tell you, Penny, in just the first 2.5 months, lost 15 pounds. Not only did her back start to feel better, but she started to function at a higher level. She had more life and vitality. Her color started to get better. And this is all during the winter. This is not because of sunshine. This is not because of getting outdoors and being in nature. This is because we're restoring the connection between the intelligence that God placed inside of our brain and body. We like to say here that healing happens from above down, inside out, that it all starts with God above, but we have to realign ourselves to his plan and his purposes in our life, his laws and principles of health and healing. Without that we're going to struggle and we're going to malfunction. We had to do that for little Zeke. He was living the 5 essentials as perfectly as I knew how, but his sister kicked him in the head. It knocked Atlas off to the side and inhibited his ability to breathe. It created a seizure, and the restoration of that alignment, bringing that Atlas back into place, restoring the movement of his skull on top of the Atlas. It allowed his body to heal and function so that he could breathe and that he would stop seizing. And the doctors haven't been able to find a problem with him since. I've had this confirmed by multiple chiropractors, and we've seen just over and over again in our offices the ability of your body to adapt and respond to all the stresses of life, whether it's viral, whether it's bacterial, whether it's grown from the inside out because of something like cancer, or grown because of your diet for something like cardiovascular disease, or it's grown because of hormone imbalance that leads to something like type 2 diabetes, and just all these different things that go on. If you've not had your central nervous system checked, if you haven't had a 5 essentials evaluation, we are here at Good Life Family Chiropractic the only certified 5 essentials office in the state of Nebraska. Within 3.5 hours of our location, we are the closest one. We have patients coming to us from Columbus, from Omaha, from Fremont, from all of the surrounding areas because of what we do specifically in our office. And it might start out looking like a very similar to most chiropractors exam, but what it comes down to is that we can continue to see improvement over time because of our corrective process, because we're reassessing the spine, and because of the specific way that we adjust. I'm certified in advanced structural correction, which basically breaks down to 3 specific techniques. Number 1, CBP, chiropractic biophysics, is one of those techniques that has some of the most research out there on not just how correcting the spine improves overall function, but also how that relates to healing and to overall health. Number 2 would be the Pettibon technique. One of the best doctors of chiropractic that I've ever had the opportunity to know, Dr. Pettibon. He actually created this system that allowed the spine to be corrected. And the 3rd technique that does advanced structural correction comes from the Clear Institute of Scoliosis Reduction. At Max Living, we get training in all 3 techniques to be able to restore the function and posture and structure of the spine so that you can heal and function at 100%. And then we throw the other 4 essentials on top of that, and you become healthier than you could ever dream. So again, pick up the phone, call our office, 531-289-7100. We're standing by to take your call and set you up for that 5 essentials consultation. I've been Dr. Jake. Join me again tomorrow for another episode of Ask Dr. Jake.